Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I got some really good ones for you today on this Friday, June 30th, 2023. It's Friday night. Welcome back. A lot's been going on with the markets, economy, current events. Let's dive into it. So let's start with the bond market. Go ahead and look at the 10-year Treasury yields hanging out around 3.86%. So I wouldn't say too high. Like, it's not like the 10-year yield is above 4%. The stock market's like crashing, and asset prices like real estate and gold are crashing because the 10-year yield is like above 4% and spiking. That's totally not happening right now. It's at 3.86%. And I guess that level of stability, meaning somebody, probably the Fed, is buying enough debt to drive bond yields and rates ultimately to a stable or lower area, and that's allowing these markets to continue inflating. Like, look at the Dow Jones, S&P 500, and NASDAQ. My God, they've been on a tear. There's that old adage, sell in May, go away for stocks. That old saying. Go ahead and look that up, sell in May, go away. Why do people say that? But boy, this summer, you would have gotten smoked if you had sold in May and gone away, because this summer's been pretty good to asset price holders. So high growth tech stocks, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google, Oracle, Nvidia, Meta, Coinbase, Tesla. Check them out. They're doing quite well. I like high growth tech, mega cap tech, just my opinion, not a buy or sell recommendation, but I like some of those companies, and look how they've been doing over the course of the summer. It's been pretty crazy. Precious metals have dipped over the summer, just a little bit though, so just kind of mulling around. But fan of precious metals on this channel, specifically physical. Okay, I don't like derivatives. I don't like gold mining companies or gold indexes or iShares Silver Trust or GLD, and I don't like this BlackRock ETF that's about to get launched, meaning I'll just buy real Bitcoin, you know what I mean? And for gold exposure, I just buy real gold, you know what I mean? But that's just my opinion. But precious metals doing fine. Platinum you can take a look at. Energy doing its thing. Take a look for Energy Cameco. Not a buy or sell recommendation, but uranium miner. That's the one exception for mining companies I'd make, is probably Cameco. We're in a stealth bull market in uranium and nuclear, okay? So look at that. Meaning the price, like let's say a basket of 10 uranium mining companies, they're like going up a lot, okay? We're in kind of a raging bull market, nuclear, and nobody's really talking about it. So if you want some opportunity in energy, I would say look at nuclear. And I understand it's polarizing. It's a double-edged sword. It's very, on the one hand, clean, efficient, green. It really is. As far as waste, it doesn't create that much waste. It's just very hazardous waste. But then the other edge of the sword being, systemic fragility and risk, meltdowns, a reactor going supercritical and killing a bunch of people, it requires a lot of specialty, a lot of regulation, and maybe, ultimately humans aren't really up for that task. And when something goes wrong with nuclear, something goes wrong, you know what I mean? Like, we're still cleaning up Fukushima. So anyway, nuclear, take a look at it for energy. And then, oil stocks like Chevron and Exxon, Halliburton, BP, they're doing their thing. So I don't really, I'm an advocate, although you got to do what you want, of holding mega cap, large cap energy companies forever. You're like, when do you sell? Never. The dividend. Hopefully the dividend by the time you retire is larger than your Social Security payment. Shoot for something like that. Try to get like $500 every quarter off of ExxonMobil or something like that. I know that wouldn't outstrip, or that wouldn't be more than a Social Security payment, but you get the idea. What if you were in retirement, you're 75 years old, and you're collecting like insane dividends on Exxon, on Chevron, on Halliburton, because you've held these companies since like 1981, like your Pepsi stock. You know what I mean? Like, you don't sell ever if it's a quality asset. And you're like, well, then how do you like get wealthy from that if it's just you hold it and you just have lots of digital ones and zeros? Well, you get loans. This is what the elites do, all right? I'm going to let you in on it. You get loans against your asset column. So if I go to Wells Fargo tomorrow or JP Morgan Chase and I say, hey, could I get a loan for $100,000? At first they're going to be like, no, why would I give you that? But I'm like, because I have $1 million worth of Chevron stock. No, I don't, but let's use that as an example. Well, now you're good for the $100,000. They'll loan to you all day, and they'll probably loan to you at like a low interest rate, like 4 or 5% or something. And you could even borrow that 100 grand at 4% interest, buy more Chevron, it goes up 8%, and now you're making money. See that? So you don't sell this stuff. If somebody is like, when do you sell your Manhattan real estate? I don't know. If you had sold it at any point since the year like 1690, it was a bad move, because today it's like a $50 million trust for like a little dinky storefront in Manhattan. You know what I mean? So the answer for things like to me, do what you want, and you know, is never sell. And maybe like if you're close to dying, you can sell. You know what I mean? You sell your principal, right? Like you sold off your Chevron, you sold off your Comico, you sold off your Halliburton, your Exxon, your Nvidia. You know, you can do that later on in life, but you really don't want to buy stocks with the intention of selling them if they're really high quality assets, you know. Not to mention, when you leave those assets alone, you do unlock after a certain amount of years that whole compounding interest, which is like the eighth wonder of the world. Like even Einstein was like, whoa, like 5% per year compounded after like 20 years starts to do some really weird stuff. And by that just starts to, you know, that's how exponential growth starts to kind of work. It's like you just keep adding 4% of that, 4% of that, 4% of a bigger and bigger number, and it starts to get really big, really quick. And so you can unlock that when you're holding on to quality assets for a long time. But I didn't really get to, mean to get into that. Just kind of some food for thought. Like maybe if you buy some Bitcoin and then somebody says, well, when are you going to sell it? You just go, sell it. That's hilarious. And that's like the right answer, So I still like Bitcoin. I like Ethereum. Litecoin's been doing some crazy stuff lately, but I'm not really a big fan of Litecoin. It went up like 27% today. Same with BCH, Bitcoin Cash. But again, I'm not a fan of Bitcoin Cash. That's like the legacy of the Bitcoin fork civil war, like way back in the day. The Bitcoin community really split, and they had like a civil war, basically, a big argument, and a bunch of Bitcoin holders went over to Bitcoin Cash, and the other half went over to Bitcoin, and ultimately the Bitcoin people won. And the Bitcoin Cash, it's like, what is this asset? You know what I mean? But I don't understand Bitcoin Cash that well, so maybe find somebody that does. But, that's running the crypto headlines right now, is like Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, stuff like that. So like Bitcoin, I like Ethereum, I like Uniswap, I like Chainlink, I like Pepe. I'm not going to shill a meme coin, but, I like Pepe. So there you go. Take it or leave it. The story of Pepe is really interesting, too. I just watched the documentary, what's it called? Feels Good Man. It came out in 2020. It's a really good documentary. Won a bunch of awards. It's on Pepe. It's on memes. So if you don't understand Pepe the Frog, or maybe you have a very like incomplete picture of what the heck is going on with that anthropomorphic frog that's like weird and kind of eerie, well, watch the documentary. You'll be like, oh, wow, this is really cool. So check it out. It's for free on YouTube. There you go. Type in on YouTube, Feels Good Man Pepe documentary. You'll find it. Watch the full documentary. I recommend you do that if you're into that kind of thing. If not, whatever. So yeah, so there you go. Crypto, precious metals, energy, high growth tech. Nothing's changed here. Cool. That submersible, that was crazy. Okay, so people were building this sub out of like different materials, like carbon fiber in the middle and then titanium steel on the ends, and then like a plexiglass porthole. Like, so that was horrible, But there's a lot on that though, so I'm not really gonna talk about that. It's interesting though. But if you want additional reading on that too, you can look up the USS Thresher and the USS Scorpion. Like there's been some other submersible catastrophes. It's crazy, guys. Talk about when something goes wrong, my gosh. And the Thresher was a nuclear sub, so. All right, there is this theory out there, and I'm not going to get all weird and conspiratorial, but it is interesting, that when James Cameron initially went to the Titanic to do a dive, kind of go look at it, film the movie Titanic, really the reason he was out there was actually to go survey wreckage of the Thresher and maybe the Scorpion, but I'm certain the Thresher, the nuclear submarine, the Thresher that imploded. And I think James Cameron was sent to see if there's what the supercritical waste is doing at the bottom of the ocean. And then he took the last 12 days of his journey to go over to the Titanic, and That was for clout, and that was for, publicity. So maybe James Cameron does what James Cameron does because not only because he is James Cameron, but because he's working with the deep state. The James Cameron is James Cameron. Check out James Cameron South Park. I was making a South Park reference. I hope you caught it. If you did, it was probably pretty rich, and for a lot of you just went right over your head. But check out James Cameron South Park. James Cameron does what James Cameron. It's hilarious. South Park's great satire and parody. I love it. I think South Park is better than Family Guy. So there you go. Take it to the bank. It's like the best, Like Dave Chappelle is the best comedian on the planet, and South Park is the funniest animated show on the planet. There you go. Trey Parker and Matt Stone are the creators of South Park. They're pretty epic. I love Trey Parker and Matt Stone. They're epic. Anyway, you can read about Trey Parker and Matt Stone. They're like I said, they did so much for South Park too. All the voices, like they are so talented in so many ways in writing the script and just kind of connecting all the dots, and really, really good satire. But anyway, not really sure how we got on that. Oh yeah, James Cameron. So yeah, you can check out the submersible accident, the implosion and subsequent explosion of that kind of energy release, just destroying the crew, and then finding, wreckage 1,600 feet away from the bow of the Titanic, confirming that, Ocean Gate's submersible imploded. It's a submersible if it has a mothership, and it's a submarine if it can do its own thing, like the USS Thresher. So there you go, fun fact for you. But anyway, horrible stuff. Don't want to spend too much time on that. There's a lot out there on that, so go for it. Prigozhin getting mad at Putin. So Putin's Pitbull recently kind of snapped at him. Putin's little Pitbull, but they came up together all right. Prigozhin, the leader of Wagner Group, who staged this coup, I'm not buying into that. I'll tell you what I think's going on. First of all, the U.S. media, they're going to tell you anything that promotes regime change with Russia and China. So they'll lie, they don't care. Anything to promote regime change. So if Prigozhin, who came up with Putin, caters for the Russian ministry, used to be a caterer, meaning he literally made the food for the military events and parades and stuff. He made the food for Putin and the Kremlin and stuff. And then he would use the money that he was making through his catering business to build Wagner Group. And then Wagner Group's essentially mercenaries. It's the enforcement arm of the Russian government that doesn't actually have to take responsibility for anything because they're a military company. They're not associated with the Russian Ministry of Defense, basically. It's kind of like Blackwater in a way, It's kind of like Blackwater for the United States. If you don't know what I'm talking about, those are contractors in Iraq and Afghanistan. Actually, when I was in Afghanistan, I met some contractors. It's a whole world, Triple Canopy. Go ahead and Google Blackwater, Triple Canopy. Blackwater changed its name 15 times, but I think Triple Canopy is still out there doing their thing. Man, crazy, So at one point in one of my Afghan deployments, I was actually the third Vic gunner. So I was up in the turret of one of these MRAPs, and I have a little machine gun up there. In the third Vic, that's actually in a 4-vehicle convoy. The third vehicle is a pretty good place to put your contractor because it's not the front vehicle to get blown up, and it's not the last vehicle, which could get blown up in a complex ambush, and it's not the second vehicle. The third's kind of the safest is what I'm getting at. So if you have a 4-vehicle convoy and you're going to put a VIP in it, a contractor that's going to come and repair your generator, he could be coming to fix computers. It could be an electrician. It could be very civilian work. He's wearing Wrangler blue jeans, but he has a combat vest on, and he's what's up, dude? And you're how'd you get this job? You're with a bunch of Marine infantrymen right now, and you're a electrician. And he's oh yeah, I was in the Army for 5 years, and then I joined Triple Canopy. You might get a story like that. You ask him, of course, how much money are you making? Because we're doing basically the same amount of crying and dying. I'm in the turret, as a Lance Corporal getting shit on, and then you got this generator mech in the vehicle with you, and he's making buku dollars, dude. He's making $200 a year, $180 a year, $150 a year, maybe only $120 a year, but he gets 30 vacation days a year, and the first 80 grand is tax free. That's contractor money, Like, I remember when I went into Afghanistan, like both times, we'd go through these like really big bases called Leatherneck or Dwyer. You can look up Camp Leatherneck, Camp Dwyer in Helmand Province. I like went through there. And you'd see like Dynacorp vans. It's like civilians everywhere, and they're making like a lot of money, and they're doing civilian work. And you're making, as a lance corporal, back then maybe I was making like $13.50 every 2 weeks, which was like not terrible if you don't have any expenses. And it was like 2010, so like, it's like maybe not terrible, but like totally not worth it. And you are getting combat pay, you're getting hazardous duty pay, you're getting overseas pay, you're getting tax free, I think, too. But it still only comes out to like 13, something like that. And then you have these contractors that are probably making like 7,000 every 2 weeks. Crazy. So anyway, Wagner Group is like that. They're like the contractor for Russia. And then everyone's like, oh, he's going to take his 25,000 man army and take over Putin. And like, no. He got mad. He lost like half his dudes in Bakhmut. So that would traumatize the hell out of you. 10% casualty rate is actually, you might think, if you don't know any better, like, oh, 10%, that's not terrible. Like 1 in 10 guys, you're still good. No, it would really F up your battalion. Like if you had 1,000 guys and you lost 100, dead and wounded, 100 total, you'd be like, this like, we're damn near almost combat ineffective already. Like it's pretty crazy what a small amount of casualties can do to a battalion. And Wagner Group lost half. Like imagine losing like 60% of your men, or half. So yeah, he's like super mad because he wants to blame Shigoyu, the Russian defense minister, for like not giving him enough ammo. So he's like flexing, and he's mad and he's lashing out. But then Putin just gave him like protection, sent him over to Belarus to just hang out and expatriate in a way, but still gain veteran Russian status and like protection. So he's just kind of making like the problem go away. But the problem isn't really that big, and it's not like Prigozhin was going to take 25,000 men and go against 1 million, you know what I mean? No. But it was pretty weird, and like the media is super like, oh my gosh, this is it. See, Putin, he's losing his grip. But they're gonna grasp for straws, anything they can, to make it look like Putin or Xi Jinping of China is losing their grip. Okay, so kind of what you got with the the psyops going on, whatever. The fog of war is real, right? So Biden's student loan forgiveness thing going on. Kind of want to give you my thoughts on that. I'm gonna frame it in kind of a weird way. All right, it's not a political issue, okay? Student loan forgiveness is not a Democrat versus Republican problem like they're trying to make it seem. It's a when we're going to do it and how much we're going to forgive, and how much is that going to weaken the dollar when we do that? And then when the dollar weakens, how much is that going to make inflation worse that we're ultimately going to have to like fudge and lie about? And then how much is that going to push real estate and stock prices and gold and Bitcoin higher? Because it's weakening the dollar. All student loan forgiveness is doing is weakening the dollar. It's not like the people who made the loan to the 18-year-olds, loaned them $200,000, are just going to hold the bag. Put it this way. Would you loan an 18-year-old $200,000 with no credit or job history? No, nobody would do that. So why'd they do it with student loan forgiveness? Because it was guaranteed by the government. So now make all the loans you want, because the government's going to paper over the losses and hold the bag. And the taxpayer is going to ultimately hold the bag for that via a weakening currency, a weakening dollar, and higher inflation. So that's the setup. It's all going to weaken the dollar. But here's the other thing: if your debt is $32 trillion, you could make the value of $32 trillion buy a pencil eraser, and now you're off the hook. So that's why they devalue the debt to begin with, because they're never going to pay off the debt. It's a debt-based monetary system. So have you noticed that if nobody would loan $200,000 to an 18-year-old with no credit or job history, unless it was backed by the government, well, now it creates kind of a moral hazard. And now all these, it created a student loan bubble, which a lot of that wealth was also siphoned off to administrators and these actual universities and, the academic power structure. But if you also notice, the federal government isn't going after them. They're not going to go after Harvard for gouging people for tuition, or they're not going to go after a state university or any of the academic power structures and say, hey, charge less for tuition. They're going to go after how much they're going to help you now that they've turned you into a debt slave. That is not admissible in bankruptcy. Key issue with the student loan debt, it's not admissible in bankruptcy. You can't just go, can't have, don't pay, dude. I'll just file for bankruptcy. I'll restructure everything. I'll build up my credit and carry on with the plan of life. You can't do that with student loans. They got you. They got you now. And now that they got you, maybe they will use it as a political bargaining chip. Like, well, vote for me because this is going nowhere fast. But maybe if you vote for me, maybe I'll be able to hook up some of you. You see, it's a power play. They turn you into a debt slave, and then they dangle forgiveness like a carrot. And then they blame Republicans who blame Democrats, and they try to make it like a political thing, but it's not a political thing. Even if it was a Republican running the show and not a Democrat right now, we'd still see, in my opinion, student loan forgiveness eventually, and we're going to. And it's not like these kids are going to pay this stuff off anyway. They're making minimum interest payments. They're just rolling it over. They're just sitting on it. But if they forgive the student loans, like let's say hypothetically we just forgave it, which I'm not really for. Like if you're saddled with student loan debt, honestly, I do feel bad for you. I'm not like one of those guys that's like, oh great, now the plumber has to pay for your underwater basket weaving degree because you went $100 jillion into debt and went nowhere, and didn't buy a house. I'm not, there's a little bit of that, but I'm not gonna drag you on that. 18-year-olds shouldn't have been given those terms, and then the government shouldn't have guaranteed it and then not let it be admissible in bankruptcy. And then you see what happened, and then it created this huge bubble, and then tuition costs went through the freaking moon, and then the quality of the education plummeted, and then the value of a degree plummeted too, because everyone freaking has one. Like you need 2 degrees to work at Panda Express, so it's like, what's the point? You know what I mean? So it got all weird and wackadoo and janky, and that's because the camel's nose got under the tent, like the government, and they're like, we're going to guarantee all this. And they're like, then I'll make 1 million student loans. And then 1 million kids went to school, and now none of them can pay it off. Like, that's what happens. You want to come at me with it's political. It's like, dude, that's a psyop. They're trying to keep you off balanced and confused with that, in my opinion. This is just my opinion, guys. So you see, I'm not really for or against the forgiveness. I'm just telling you what is going to happen and what is happening. And whenever they talk about forgiveness, it hurts the dollar 2 ways, because A, the government's just going to paper over the creditors who aren't going to get paid back with fake money, so they're just going to paper over it, make it all better with fake money, which is going to stoke inflation. And here's really cool. Here's a hidden feature. Now all these students who are saddled with debt and would otherwise be making interest payments and paying down the principal on their debt, well, if it's forgiven, now they have a lot of disposable income, so they go out and they bring even more consumption into the present, and prices go up even more, because then there's less stuff on the shelf, kind of like if I gave everyone in your neighborhood $1 million, they'd all go out and spend it, and then there would be nothing on the shelves, and the price would go up a lot, because you took all that future consumption, you dropped it on the president. So if they do that with the student loans and they just forgive it all, you're going to get inflation both ways. You're going to get it through the government, ultimately needing to paper over those losses. There's a lot of debt right there they're going to need to add to just paper over the losses, and then you're also going to have a lot more millennials that would otherwise be paying down student loans shopping on Amazon, which would create even more inflation, which so they don't want to do that because they're already stoking inflation. They got a lot of inflation to bail out Silicon Valley Bank is dead, so they're gone. Bye. But they had enough to bail out these banks. As soon as the Silicon Valley Bank crisis started, you notice the Fed stepped in and started backstopping them. So that weakened the dollar. We got a lot of inflation, guys, and inflation's the boogeyman. And they're going to tell you that inflation's coming down because, anything to make it seem like you have a little bit of hookup for the middle and working class, anything to make it seem like groceries are going to start coming down. But just because the rate of inflation is slowing, you still have inflation. Meaning if you had 10% inflation 2 years ago, 9% last year, and 8% this year, well, you still have, that's a lot of inflation over the course of 3 years. But they'd say, look, the rate's falling, the inflation's falling. And the media wants to focus on that, and they don't want to focus on net. You go to the grocery store and just get destroyed, or you go to the gas pump, or you go out on vacation and you're just getting whoa, you know what I mean? So it's pretty crazy stuff, but whatever. We're going to be all right. that's really all I got for you guys for right now. So yeah, markets continue to defy gravity, but I like high growth tech, precious metals, the physical kind, crypto, energy, particularly nuclear right now, which appears to be in some sort of stealth bull market. So maybe some opportunity there. Those are just things I like. I'm just telling you what I'm into. Nothing's really changed. And yeah, just some of, my thoughts on some of the things going on. So that's really all I got for you for right now. Sorry it's been a while since I've done a video. We're gonna be all right. This is kind of heavy stuff. I'm always talking about like death and infinity, so it's like daunting and it's like heavy. It's not like TV shows, even though I did talk about South Park. What's up? And then also check out Greta Thunberg hanging out with Zelensky. That's what I'm gonna leave you off on. All right, Greta Thunberg, tone deaf Greta Thunberg preaching climate change to a guy who's like up to his elbows in like guts and blood and war. And she, it's pretty tone deaf that the elites that are really concerned about climate change, which maybe they're not totally wrong on some of those things, but we talk about priorities. I'd get honestly mad if Greta Thunberg was like trying to preach to me about climate change while I'm like trying to not die. Like, are you kidding me? And I thought it was so tone deaf that I just had to get a piece of that conversation. And she's talking to him about like clean water and a clean ecosystem. And he's like, yeah, dirty water's your problem. I have a bunch of bombed out cities, people drinking mud water and like dying in the streets. Like, clean water's an issue. You know what I mean? Like, she's there to talk about, it's really interesting that the people, BlackRock, who is now rebuilding Ukraine and probably sponsoring Greta, is also buying the uranium-tipped ammunition that gets fired all over the battlefield. So they shoot a bunch of depleted uranium rounds at like Russian forces and civilians getting caught in the middle. It's people just getting blown into fractions. Like you can't imagine the PTSD and the trauma of a conventional war in 2023. That's disgusting. Like, that's disgusting. And then you're gonna go there and like talk to him about like the rabbits and the fish. Are you freaking kidding me? Crazy, so woof, wow, and the irony, we're gonna pay to up our howitzer production and up our uranium depleted round production to go like murk Russian forces and Wagner Group. And then when that destroys the environment, we're gonna have like Greta Thunberg go talk to Zelensky about climate change while we have like BlackRock and JP Morgan like rebuilding Ukraine. Like, are you kidding me? And Google everything that I just said. Like, you couldn't make that up. So it's pretty crazy, but we're gonna be all right, guys. We're gonna keep going. The video's getting pretty long. Thanks for hanging out with me on this Friday night. Hope you're doing well, and we're just gonna keep going. All right, like, subscribe, comment, share, whatever. You guys are awesome, and we're just gonna keep going. Till next time.